China's recent unveiling of its updated standard map has stirred controversy as it incorporates contentious territories including Arunachal Pradesh, Aksai Chin, Taiwan and the disputed South China Sea regions. The release has raised diplomatic concerns and rekindled existing disputes. China's official map, referred to as the 2023 edition, was introduced by the Ministry of Natural Resources Standard Map Service website. The map employs a method involving national boundaries to depict China's perspective on global geography, potentially inflaming tensions with neighboring nations. Of particular significance is the inclusion of Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin, both areas that have long been subject to conflicting claims between China and India. Arunachal Pradesh, despite China's assertions of it as South Tibet, has steadfastly remained an integral part of India. India has consistently reiterated this stance. India has repeatedly said that the state of Arunachal Pradesh has always been and always will be an integral part of the country. Before we jump into a discussion, let's take a look at the real map of China. And let me also quickly introduce the people who will be speaking about this very, very serious issue. Ambassador Deepak Vora, former diplomat, joins us on the show. Major General A.K. Sivach, former head of Territorial Army and geostrategic defense expert, also with us on the program. Mr. Vijay Kranti, India-China relations and foreign policy expert, joins us on the program as well. And last but by no means the least, Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, also graces us with his presence on this show. Okay, I'm going to go over to the big screen and exactly try and show you the hypocrisy, the dichotomy, the double standards with which China operates. Well, to begin with, China doesn't have anything of its own. None of it is original. Most of it is occupied. Right from proper China to the adjoining Chinese occupied Tibet, as we all know, has been a cause of concern, even when it comes to certain looming humanitarian crisis. The Chinese occupied East Turkestan is another area which calls for some sort of an action to be taken against China. Chinese occupied Yunnan is also contentious. Apart from what you see right here in the purple perimeter, everything outside of China is not theirs. It has been forcefully occupied, including Chinese occupied southern Mongolia, Chinese occupied Manchuria as well. These people are different. They have had a history of Chinese aggression, and China has also not budged from its stance of illegally occupying areas that necessarily don't belong to it. And that's exactly what they're doing with Arunachal Pradesh as well. As you can see, right around that area is where China continues to claim its own territorial supremacy. Right, I'm going to go over to Professor Nalapat and take the first question from him. Professor Nalapat, does this come to you as a surprise? We always knew, despite the optics that continue to confuse and put us in a conundrum with the core commander talk, with this summit and that summit, it really boils down to one thing. China is going to do its own, and China is going to distract us with pleasantries and ridiculous diplomatic stances. But when it comes to real action, they will stab us in the back like they did in 1962.
Vineet, I don't think anyone who has been watching the NewsX channel over the past year and this year is going to be surprised. You will not forget that that in 2022, there was a Samarkand meeting of the SCO, and members of the Chinese delegation unofficially distributed a map among some of the participants in the SCO meeting at that time. And that map was precisely this particular map. That map was distributed unofficially by members of the official Chinese delegation at the Samarkand meeting, which, as I recall, took place on September 16th and 17th of 2022. After 2020, so we're talking about 2022, and now today we are looking at 2023. A year later, and now what has happened? Hey presto, this has become standard. This has now gone officially as an official map of China. And one of the reasons is, quite frankly, that practically every important country got information about the distribution of these maps. As I recall, I mentioned it on NewsX channel more than once. If I'm not mistaken, I wrote about it also at that point in time, because friends from abroad had alerted me to this particular fact that this is what the Chinese were up to. Well, they were up to that, but there was nothing, neither in the United States, where Ambassador Vora is, nor anywhere else, was there any kind of reaction at all. And today, what are you seeing? You are seeing China essentially challenging the United States, challenging India, challenging ASEAN. They are claiming large parts of ASEAN territory as theirs. They are claiming Taiwan and therefore creating a huge security issue for Japan, for South Korea, for the Philippines, for the United States, for India as well. And they're claiming, parts of India that, as you correctly said, have never belonged to them. And they're doing all this just days before a very important meeting of all these world leaders. So, frankly, the timing is something which is, which is really, which really comes as a surprise to me. I would have expected them to do this after the G20 meeting, unless it's their intention, frankly, to try and somehow drive a spoke into the meeting. I think I'm not going to say anything, but in Sunday Guardian I wrote a very important country, in Asia, tried to persuade President Putin to come to Delhi, and President Putin said, no, I'm not going to come. And well, lo and behold, now you're seeing this particular map on the eve of the G20 meeting. I want to say one thing, Vineet. Anybody who has any illusions that you can talk and settle matters with China, what you're really saying is that you surrender to China completely and then they will settle you as a subsidiary state. There is no other way, as far as they are concerned, of conducting a dialogue. A dialogue is only meant to delay what they regard as inevitable, which is that they grab whatever they want to grab, and in the meantime they say, well, ignore this land grab, let's go in for a new round and a new relationship. Then more land grab, more new round, more relationship. I repeat, Vineet, in 2022, when this map was circulated at Samarkand, I raised this issue in this channel, in NewsX. I think I wrote about it in the Sunday Guardian as well. So it's now, for us to be surprised, I see no reason why any viewer of NewsX should be surprised by this at all.
You're quite right about that, Professor Nalapat. Ambassador Vora, we've been down this road multiple times, but considering the fact that China's economy, is going the Pakistan way, and I mean that as an adjective, do you think that China is looking for, excuses basically to stir up some sort of a counter emotion from India, and then all the headlines related to that particular, skirmish or tension between India and China, inundate and basically eclipse the real elephant in the room for China? That's something that they've done in the past as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malhotra. It's now 0540 in New York. You can see the lights behind me in Manhattan. And I've just heard what Professor Madhav Nalapat has said. I can't match his eloquence. By the way, the scarf that I'm wearing over my left shoulder, it looks right on your screen. I bought it in Arunachal Pradesh. I paid in Indian rupees. Unless the yuan has been replaced with rupees, if Arunachal is Chinese territory, that would be a very sensible thing to do, because nobody wants the yuan anymore. So if you guys want to adopt the rupee, go right ahead. I'm sure we can persuade the government of India to allow you to do so.
The only place the yuan works is Rawalpindi, sir.
Even there, I believe they don't. It's used for cleaning whatever you clean every morning, sir. So I won't go By the way, I don't know if you've looked at the map very carefully, the one they've published, and told Professor Kranti that, Professor Nalapat, that they've even shown the moon as part of China. So that's got my wife very worried. She said, agar unka hai, to phir hum Karwa Chauth pe kya dekhenge? So I have no idea what to tell her about this. In any case, you have General Sivaji, Professor Nalapat, Mr. Vijay Kranti, whose knowledge is far superior to mine. Sir, China has been trying cartographic aggression against us for a long time. In the 1950s, and when we said, why are you showing our territories? They said, look, these are all maps of the Kuomintang regime, and we haven't had a time to look at them. Once we do, or we'll settle it. But when they published their maps, they showed even more territory. And we said, but ye tumne kya kaha? You promised us something else. They said, well, we promised you that we'd take a look. We didn't say we'd change them. Then they tried military aggression, as you know, 62, and then 2020. Economic pressure since the new millennium, psychological pressure, always. And then they've even tried nomenclature pressure, if there's such a word, by changing the names of some villages. You might recall, sir, last year in Arunachal Pradesh. Now, I think we should revert to the old biblical name for China in Isaiah 49:12. An American friend told me. The old biblical name is Sin, S-I-N. Its inhabitants are inhabitants of the land of sin. Mark my words, it will soon set up a separate unit within the Communist Party to make laws for Arunachal Pradesh. Their foreign ministry and that Ding Long, Ping Pong, whatever his name is, he talks of improving relationship with India, and then look at what he does. Sir, one thing is clear. Despite all its smiles, it does not like India, that it sees as a rapidly rising rival, not on the Asian stage, but on the world stage. Sir, China is predictably unpredictable. The besetting sin of its foreign policy is intellectual sclerosis. It saw how other countries succumb to hyperpower America's blandishments and thinks it can use that as a template. Sir, it's a different world we wake up to every day. And continuing with worn-out, unsupported assumptions makes understanding our new world impossible. China, as you rightly pointed out, they are up the creek. The Americans would use a tougher word. They're up the creek without a paddle. There is enormous pressure that the ping pong faces, collapsing economy, destroyed property sector, growing unemployment. He doesn't want it to be known that he's a weakling. On the other hand, the map department may just be living in an echo chamber and saying this is what he wants. Let me conclude by saying, what is the Chinese Communist Party's mindset? Former Mongolian president, I can never pronounce his name, I've met him a couple of times, Sekyajin Elbedork. He has met ping pong 30 times, and he wrote, sir, exactly 2 years ago. She demonstrates, as many in history have before him, that it is possible to be charismatic in person and dangerous and autocratic on the world stage. The man, and I quote, is evil. I rest my case, sir.
You're absolutely right. General Sivach, I hope you can hear me, sir.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sir, Agatha Christie's character, Hercule Poirot, went on to say that it's stupid to believe in coincidences. And this map comes out at a time when India is enjoying the glory, the fame, as well as the achievement of landing on the moon. Do you think this is perhaps, sheer coincidence, or China is actually planning, trying to humiliate India with these gestures?
Very correct. There are three reasons. You see, first of all, one has to understand the economy of China not doing well, as brought out by my co-panelists, that basically the inflation is the highest today. The unemployment is also again rising every day. The supply chains are shifting from China. There is a decoupling of certain supply chains, especially of basically of semiconductor taking place. So China is almost in an unsaid recession. At the same time, what's happening is that India is progressing very high. India is the fastest growing economy before COVID-19 and fastest growing economy after COVID-19. And once we have landed our Chandrayaan-3 in the southern portion of a moon, they cannot see our success. And what is the timing is very important. Just before G20 meeting, a G20 meeting which in 1 year, there are more than 60 to 70 meetings have taken place all over the country. We have showcased our might, economic power, and everyone is looking up to see what will be the final outcome on 9th-10th September. So possibly this is a very well calculated move to embarrass India, to put us on a back foot. So it's more of a psychological warfare. It is not that they are first time calling Arunachal as a part of China and as a South Tibet, also calling Aksai Chin as a part of that, which we have been telling them time and again. But what is more important is they are also showing Taiwan as a part of China and also the 9-dash line, South China Sea, which they have a problem with Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei and Philippines. So overall, to me, it looks like that's a very well calculated move, which China are doing. What China says, what it does is as it is entirely two different things. But we have to be very alert and live. Just about a month or two back, they have also started again giving stipend visa to our sports person from Arunachal Pradesh. My take is that first you don't believe what China is saying and what they are doing, you do take your action. I'm saying time has come when we should start raising finger on Tibet. We should call Tibet autonomous region. And this one China policy is too long we have been following. Only weak follows what your enemy is dictating. And the second thing is we must start having better relation and official relation with Taiwan. Forget about China because whatever we have to achieve with your military power. I don't think diplomacy will work with China until unless you are stronger than them or equally strong, which we are coming. There's no doubt. And as on today, from Arunachal Pradesh to you can say Ladakh, we are equally strong, and we will give them a bloody nose if they try any stunt. We have shown that on a class range on August 29th, 30th, 2020, the Indians can do what Chinese can't even dream. So my question is that whatever they do it, there is a very well calculated move. To me, it looks like that they want that G20 meeting should not succeed. They want to embarrass India just before this very important mega event. Winning.
Mr. Kranti, in fact, in 2022, under Xi Jinping, Beijing had also tightened the management of its borders and, the emphasis on its sovereignty as well. And this was right around the time when China was, of course, being boxed in for the COVID-19 pandemic. What do they have today that needs, distraction by the Chinese people and the world at large so that they can, in fact, claim areas which don't belong to them?
To me, it appears that there is something distraction element, but I look at it a different way, rather opposite way. To me, it appears that she is trying to divert the attention of his people to other issues than what the people are facing and what can prove to be, the real problem for Xi Jinping himself. The problems inside China are enormous. Leave aside unemployment and, the suffering of people during COVID and the way in very, very long history, the people stood up against Xi Jinping and raised opposition against him by name. That was one thing small. But I see the problem is within the Communist Party of China, within the PLA. Over the past years, to consolidate his own position, Xi Jinping has sacrificed in the sense that, hundreds of senior communist leaders have simply vanished without a trail. So many senior and junior PLA officers have simply vanished from records, from anything. And but it doesn't mean that all his opponents within the Communist Party or PLA they are finished. It is only the senior people or those people who were immediate threat to him. He removed them, and the others who are still having grudges against him, their number is enormous within the system. So Xi Jinping needs to divert attention of his people, of the cadres of Communist Party, of PLA officials from his own misdeeds. So he is, if you see in this map, 3 areas where he has shown aggression again. That 9-dash line in South China Sea is a very old issue. Taiwan he wants to show as a part of China. And India, the way he has already gobbled up Aksai Chin, which was our mistake, and now he is showing the same thing on Arunachal Pradesh. To me, it appears Xi Jinping is preparing for the day when things go out of his hand, and he has to start a new theater to divert attention of the Chinese people. And there are two theaters for that. One is Taiwan and other is India. So that is why he is focusing on Arunachal Pradesh and on Taiwan. And now it will depend on that day which is which is more convenient for Xi, or where he has fears of being beaten. The chances are lesser, whether it is India or it is Taiwan. And for that, I think India should remain, should prepare for that day, should not focus on any smiles of Xi Jinping. Simply, India should go on preparing at a high speed for the defense of India against China, so that whenever Xi Jinping has to make a choice whether to raise a fight with Taiwan or India, I think we should give him a choice of Taiwan. And when I say this, at the same time, I very sincerely believe that India has to now start thinking very fresh about who. India should now think very seriously about making or improving relations with Taiwan. Our friend just now pointed out, we should raise our relations to full diplomatic relations with Taiwan, join hands with them, and those countries which are at threat from China, direct threat. Taiwan is there, Japan is there, Australia is there, Vietnam is there. So all these countries, India should join hands with them, and India should have a kind of defense relations with them, so that if there is a problem with one of these countries, all these countries should be together. You cannot beat China alone. Any of the countries, including America, can't do it. You will have to join hands. And I think events like this, when he releases maps and shows, a country like Brunei, small country Brunei, which is more than 2,000 kilometers away from the nearest shore of China, he is showing Brunei as a part of China. Malaysia, Philippines, they are far beyond 2,000 kilometers from Chinese shores, and he is showing aggression against them and claiming their areas, which are their exclusive economic zones, as part of China. So this shows India should identify all these countries as friends, as allies, and now it is time when all these countries should also start thinking of making their own kind of NATO, which should be, which attack on one
Understood,
country
sir.
by China, they should take attack on them, and all should join hands, and then China will have a bleeding nose.
Understood, sir. Closing thoughts from everyone, starting with Professor Nalapat.
Well, look, I'd like to point out that it's not simply India that is frankly very unhappy at this kind of an undiplomatic move by China. The United States and Japan will be very, very unhappy about what they're doing regarding Taiwan, for example, apart from what they're doing about India. ASEAN will be extremely unhappy, not to mention India or the United States or Japan or Australia, all these countries, as to the kind of expansive claims that they've got on the South China Sea, which a lot of individuals have said should be renamed as soon as possible the ASEAN Sea. It actually belongs to ASEAN. I don't see any reason why it should not be named after ASEAN. I'd like to point out that we have been talking about the Chinese economic collapse and all that. The way I look at it, frankly, China is also involved in a currency war with the United States, which unfortunately the United States sanctions post the Ukraine war have actually facilitated China a lot. One, by diverting attention back to Russia, back to Europe, and two, by giving them an opening in the currency war. And in my opinion, the Chinese are on their way to making 10 RMB equal a dollar. And when that happens, there's going to be a currency shock in Japan, in South Korea, in large parts of the world. So the Chinese are preparing several traps, if I may say so, in Xi Jinping's obsessive desire to prevail in this, what he sees as a superpower contest. And I want to say one more thing, Vinny. 1959, 60, 61, we deluded ourselves that no, the Chinese are in famine, they're in a state of collapse, there's almost a civil war, nothing is going to happen. and 62 happened. I'm happy to say, at least under Prime Minister Modi, that's not happening. India is fortifying its border. India has hit back very hard at Chinese attempts at infiltration, very, very hard, as you saw, for example, in Galwan. And from that point of view, India is fully prepared. But the fact is, I agree completely with Vijay, there needs to be an alliance, a declared alliance. And the purpose of this alliance has got to be defensive. There's no point saying, oh, the Quad is basically a feel-good shop where whatever you watch Bollywood movies, you watch Hollywood movies, you eat chocolates, you eat cotton candy, and you have a nice time. No, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, the Quad has got to be a security alliance, and the sooner you make it that, the better for the entire democratic world.
Right. Ambassador Vora, quickly, sir.
Very quickly, sir, I just wanted to say that about G20, which Jen Saab mentioned, I hope the fellow doesn't come because it's going to distract us unnecessarily. And second, if he tries to sabotage it, it's going to be egg all over his face because bilateral issues are not supposed to be discussed. Sir, G7 is the Brahmins of the world, and this BRICS thing that is coming are the Shudras, and the G20 is the Narad Munis. They are the peacemakers between the two extremes. So he's not going to dare do it. Finally, China talks of its comprehensive national power that has three pillars: economy, diplomacy, and military. First two have collapsed. The economy is non-existent. Its diplomacy, one has never heard of it. The military, he will not dare expose it again as a bloated paper tiger. So we'll hit back, but at a time and place of our choosing. And it is my considered opinion. If I were one of his advisors, I'd tell him, look, Dingling, Tingling, whatever your name is, don't go to India because nobody is going to give you time for a meeting. If they do, it'll be smiles and Hollywood movies and candy and so on, but nobody likes you. Take a look at the latest Edelman Trust Barometer. China ranks last among the countries that people trust.
Right. Jal Sawaj?
3 points. One is there's no doubt about it. India must be well prepared from Arunachal Pradesh to Ladakh. We cannot take China lightly. Whether there are 19 Corps Commander talks or whether it is going to be future talks, but China intention can never be deciphered. So having said so, you improve your infrastructure, you improve your capability to intervene inside China and Tibet. And that which we are doing it by raising strike force and trying to give a clear message to China that we will also able to go inside China if they think that they can come in India. So that is one thing which is happening, and this is a very positive step. The another thing, as far as the Quad is concerned, though it is an economic forum, but the way the Malabar exercise is being held as the naval component of this, I think they will come up because no economic power can match with the Chinese might. What we need is a military teeth, and I suppose the Quad, time and again China is calling it Asian NATO because somewhere they are afraid of Quad, and I suppose the Quad plus is the answer, where the France also comes in, New Zealand also comes, and a country like South Korea also join, and that is the way you
answer Mr. Kranti, sir, 10 seconds, sir, completely out of time.
Right. So I would say that the way China has now laid its claims openly on Arunachal Pradesh and other parts of India, this is a license they have issued to India, and India must use this license. And now India should tell China that its presence in Tibet is illegal and they have occupied Tibet as a colony. They should vacate it. We have no borders with China. We have borders with Tibet. We don't recognize your presence. And India should now raise its relations with the government of Tibet in exile. And that will be the real blow back to China. And otherwise, if we go on recognizing its presence in Tibet, I think they will every day they will use their presence in Tibet to claim our own areas. So we should stop right now recognizing China's presence in Tibet, and India must tell them that China must vacate Tibet and rehabilitate the independent status of Tibet as it was on 1951.
All right, sir. On that note, we dip into a short break. In fact, we'll continue talking about this map, but from a different angle on the other side.